You need an agenda? Okay.
I'll make a motion to come out of executive session.
I have a motion by Barker, second by Hauser to come out of executive session. Roll call vote, Barker.
Yes.
Cost.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
And Marmy's a yes, 5-0. Nothing was discussed. Or nothing was decided upon in the executive committee. It was just an update on negotiations dealing with personnel matters. And so with that, this finance committee meeting stands adjourned. Next up, service.
All right, we'll close service committee meeting to get order. Those present of myself, Rath, Neely, Foss, and Blind is absent. First, ordinance 25-35, an ordinance enacting section 256.18 regarding public improvement retainage provisions and placing it within the administrative code of the codified ordinances of City of Doraville, Ohio.
So, good evening. Okay, so, basic notes here so I can try to capture it all. Basically, the Ohio Revised Code changed recently, to now require municipalities to withhold 4% retainage on large projects. So currently, or prior to that change, we withheld 8% retainage. So that retainage was, if it's a $100,000 project, we would retain 8% of that money until the end of the project. And then once the contract was satisfied, and the contractor performed all the duties they were required to do, we would release that retainage. The revised code is now only requiring us to withhold 4%. So the contractor, receives more of their funding throughout the length of the project. Additionally, the revised code requires for any of that retainage to also pay interest to the contractor at the end of the contract. So if I receive those, or if the city receives those funds, we're withholding 8% or 4% at this time. At the end of the project, we have to pay that 4% plus any interest that was earned on that money. What this legislation is asking it for is to exempt the city from requiring the city to pay that interest on the retained funds. Reasons for that are most of our projects are funded, our capital projects are funded through loan dollars. So we don't actually receive those dollars into the city's bank account until they're paid to the contractor. So, for example, like on a house loan, if you go buy a house or you're constructing a house, you get a $100,000 loan. You're not getting all that $100,000 up front. You're doing draws on that money throughout the length of the project. Same thing for us. When the city has a project and it's a 2 or 3 year project, when those retained funds are held throughout the length of the project, the city never sees them. And so we don't have them in our bank account to actually earn interest with those funds, with that money. And so at the end of the project, if the city is expected to pay that interest to the contractor, we have to have a mechanism to earn that interest in an investment and then pay the contractor. If that makes sense. So, what we're looking to do is exempt the city from that Ohio Revised Code of paying the interest at the end of the project. I put together a little example. So the next project we have for our long-term control plan is our 16 North project, and it's a $65 million project. It's expected to take 2.5 to 3 million, 3 years to complete. The 4% retainage equates to about $380,000 that the city would be required to pay in interest on the retained funds. So the retainage would be about $2.5 million. The interest at 5% of that over 2.5 years is almost $400,000. So what we're asking to do is exempt from that. There are other cities that do it, so this is not, we're not asking for an exception that others are not doing already. When we bid projects, we would make it very clear to the contractor that we are exempt from that. So in the bid documents, when we award the project, we would say, make it clear that don't expect that the interest will be paid to you at the end of the project. Happy to answer any questions. I know that's a lot, but happy to answer questions if you have.
Brandon, where is that 4%? So if you start a project today and it's a 3-year project, the 4% retainage, where is that 4% go to today? Where does it sit?
It sits with the loan. So right now, most of our projects are funded through Ohio Development or DEPA funding, which is the State Revolving Loan Fund. And the Ohio Water Development Authority is the ones that they're the company that awards those loans. So they bond that money. They're taking that money, they're holding it. And then if I have
Is it actually earning interest at that time?
not for the city of Newark, no.
Right.
I can't answer that. I'm assuming, I can't answer that. The state, when they take, their $100 billion and they bond that, I'm assuming that they're earning some interest on that money, but I can't speak intelligently to that.
That's one giant fund that's not singled out as a dual project.
No, and so if I, like this $65 million project, throughout the length of that project, if next month we have to pay $1 million payment to a contractor, I'm only taking 96% of that, paying the contractor, and then the other 4% is still being held at our debt, at OWDA's in their bank account.
And that's due
So
to
we
the
never see it.
contractor upon completion of the contract.
Correct. Successful completion of the project.
So, sure.
And it basically provides for, if heaven forbid, if a contractor fails to perform, then we can take those funds and hire another contractor to do what the first contractor should have done. And it's I'm again related to a house. If I'm having a house project done, I'm not gonna give that contractor $30,000 to do a house repair. I'll make paying 15%, and then at the end of the project, I'll pay the other 50%. Just, it's making sure you're getting what you're paying for.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Just to break it down for me, it's simpler. So at the end, this 4%, we have not made interest on that. So when we're giving it back, we're giving back money we didn't earn. We're giving back just that much more.
You're exactly right. That's the problem with it.
Right.
If this was a real world where we got that money up front and we were earning interest on it, I can totally see that, yeah, we should be responsible to pay, because that's money that the contractor could have earned. They put it in their bank account and make interest on that. I think that's the reason for the revised code language to be that way. But we have never seen that money until we actually pay the contractor. So at the end of the project, I get that money in, the city immediately pays it to the contractor. We never earn interest on it.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Neely. Seconded by Blind. Yeah, I like your example of the $30,000 home improvement. It would be the same way I would give somebody half up front, half upon completion. But what I do with that $15,000, always doing the job, is quite honestly.
And the retainage is very common. That's not a new thing. The reduction to 4% is the only new change to that.
Any questions from the audience? Mr. Marmy?
Yeah, I guess I've got a comment. To even take it one step further, we are paying interest on that 4% because we get a note. And we aren't bonding it yet. We usually get a note, but we have to pay interest. If it's a 3-year project, we still have to pay interest on the money that they have pledged that's there for us. So we're paying interest on that. We're not getting interest. So it's even worse than what it would be even worse than what we think if we gave interest to them, because we're paying interest to the bank or whoever's holding our note, plus we're paying interest to them. So to take it even one step further, we would be paying them.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, all those in favor of passage on council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That passes with a vote of 4-0 with one absence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, next is ordinance 25-36, an ordinance amending part 10, title 4, chapter 1048, water of the codified ordinances of the city of Newark, Ohio, to include section 1048.16, prohibition of water wells.
Okay, so another, pretty good sized change that we're looking to implement. So currently, there is nothing to stop a person or a business or an entity or a industry from coming into the city of Newark and drilling a private well to draw water out of the ground and do whatever they wish with it. Currently, that process is permitted by the by the Lincoln County Health Department and has been for many years. So if a person wants to come in and build a house, drill a well, they would have to file a permit with the Lincoln County Health Department. Lincoln County Health Department would agree to it. Here's what you're using it for. Here's the volume of water that's coming out of that well. And would file that with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources as you would if you lived in the country. The challenge of this is private wells have two things. We are looking to, as you know, water in Lincoln County is becoming an issue. It's almost like we live in Colorado or Arizona or somewhere arid, but two things that can cause. One is number one, the quantity of water that Newark uses to provide water for our citizens. It can pull water out that the city would no longer have access to. And secondly, is from a qualitative perspective, every private well has a potential to be a contamination issue for the groundwater that's in the ground. If you think of the aquifers that are in the ground, they're just big rivers and that are under the surface. And so there is a risk of contamination that could occur. So what we're looking to do is restrict those private wells from being dug and used within the city limits. Basically, any person that wanted to drill or that wanted water in the city of Newark or any industry or commercial business would buy water from the city of Newark. We have water in pretty much every part of the current corporation of Newark. So there's really no need that a person could not, get public water where they want to construct a house or a business. There would, however, be in the legislation, there is an exception to that. So we do understand that there are construction activities that happen occasionally for large scale construction where you might need to dig a footer down 30 feet and there might be groundwater that you need to drill a dewatering well for concrete. So construction activities on a temporary basis for a temporary well would still be permitted. And also in a commercial or industrial application where a business wants to come in and needs water for a non-potable source. So they would want to drill a well and use it for a cooling tower or something other than just drinking it and using it as a potable water source. In order to get that exception, that would have to, go ahead. Get a question?
What do you think? I mean, it's still a concern of contaminating the aquifer.
So in order to get that exception, it would have to pass 2/3 vote of this body. So anybody that wanted to drill a well would have to have justification, an engineering study done, and say, yes, this makes sense to drill this well because of some undue hardship that tying into the city's water system would cause. I don't think that's very likely, but when we were reviewing other legislation like this throughout the country that other folks, other municipalities had done this same thing, there were some exceptions that were allowed based on hardships, odd situations that you might want to allow something like this. I can't speak to every situation, but that would be very hard to allow, in my opinion. And myself, water experts, folks that are way smarter than me, that are water engineers and geologists, could help justify that. But that would be an exception that council they would have to present to council and council would pass.
How does this affect current wells?
Any current well still stay in service. Just would not allow any new wells to be drilled in the city.
Maybe commercial wells?
Yeah, there are a few commercial wells, yeah. Or industries around the city. Would not expect those to change.
To piggyback on that, what if their well goes bad or of good water, and they replace it, or no?
We would expect, so yes, we would expect them to either submit a plan for approval to replace it, or tie into the city's water system.
So that plan to replace the well still go under the same. Since
On the new well. So I equate this, and I talked to the health department, the county health department, they're fully supportive of this legislation as well. Very similar to septic tanks. You know, if you have a septic tank within the city and there's a public sewer in front of your property, you're allowed to keep that sewer or that septic tank in operation. If that septic tank fails and you have to replace it, the health department will require that customer to connect to our city sewer system. So very similar application as what this would be.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, so with the current wells, do they get any checks like with the county now? Like the ones that are registered now, did they kind of like come check on them or anything like
Is there
that?
any oversights or?
Good question, but to my knowledge, no, I don't want to speak for the county, but I don't think so. All current wells are in a database for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Right.
So that's where they're maintained, but to my knowledge, the health department is not going out checking.
But they have a complaint or something, like if someone has a complaint, who do they call now? Who they call?
I mean, there's a lot of well companies around that would do that. That's where you start. Now, say you have a problem and you call a company to come fix your well, they would have to file that permit with the health department.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. Good question though.
Where does this fall within a natural resource? Because rain falls from the sky, falls on your property. Okay, you have it on your property. Where does that fall within property owners' rights? Does that water not belong to that person? They have the opportunity to use that water as they wish, to drill that well. I mean, how far down does that go? Does the property? Are we not, I would be cautious of infringing on their rights as a matter of everybody.
It's a good question, and there are none, not in this area. There are, you know, in Colorado or Lake Erie, the Lake Erie Court, you can't pull water out of Lake Erie and pump it to Iowa. Colorado River has restrictions like that. In Ohio, there are none. So there is nothing to really stop that from occurring, I guess. And that's one of our big concerns of why we're trying to implement this as well, is looking out for the city of Newark. The city of Newark pulls our water from the Licking River, but we also have a well field north of the city that in times of extreme drought or down the road, we can supplement the river flow with those wells. If I got a bunch of people drilling water wells and around that area that they're going to drain that aquifer, the city of Newark could potentially limit our capacity of that well field. So we're also looking at it from that perspective as well.
You talk about property owner rights, but if you have an acre of land and you drill a well down 75 to 125 feet, you are drilling into an underground river or an underground lake, of which only a small portion of that water actually is below your property, but you're draining it from all your neighbors as well. So just because you drilled down on your property does not mean you're taking water from directly below your property. It is coming from other sources outside of that as well, and it's for the betterment of all, not for just that 1 acre to get water.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is a zone of influence. So from every well that's drawn, there's a zone of influence that if you're drawing that water table down to that point of withdrawal. It's a good point. I guess from the city's perspective, we are looking at it to try to continue to make sure that we have water for the city of Newark residents for the next, 50 years when I'm dead and gone. That's kind of our goal with this.
There's a battery up down.
Brandon, there's something called an urban setting designation. Does that apply in this case where you identify an urban area as only being able to use potable water from a public source? That's my question.
I don't know the answer to that, Mark. We had that come up recently.
For the brownfield.
The brownfield site, yeah, the brownfield site that we had, that's an EPA designation. And they, as part of that, Ohio EPA was very concerned about, impacts to contamination in the city of Newark's public water source and any municipality. I guess I can say the issue with that is there's a potential for that, in that instance, 21st Street area, right?
And Buckeye.
Yeah, Buckeye at 21st Street. In that example, that was far enough south from our watershed that it didn't directly impact our water source. An issue like that could impact it. I think speaking of hypotheticals, but yeah, definitely a concern. That's the other reason for this legislation.
It's really sparked a little conversation, and I thought it would.
Mr. Chair,
But
I would just say, I'm gonna offer a motion first. Two things are resident, there's one, potential contamination. If you have, we're not in the country, they're all spread out. We have a lot of concentrated residential housing. We have that many water wells going down. There is a possibility somebody's gonna contaminate the water for all. The other one is the scarcity aspect of it, which resonates with me as well. In that, if we have that many wells going down, is it gonna jeopardize the water for the rest who are using city water? So those are kind of my two, because I'm with you on property rights. That's something I'm always very weary of and want to guard those. But in this circumstance, with the potential contamination and the scarcity of those aquifers, I'll make a motion.
Well, I have another question. If indeed this were to pass, then it would behoove us to also pass legislation to not sell water. Because if it's that, I'm sorry, this would also behoove us to pass legislation to not sell our water. Because if scarcity is that much of an issue, well then, my goodness, we shouldn't sell it. And as you well know, people from all around us, counties from all around us, businesses from all around us, water is the hottest commodity right now. And so let's not talk about both sides of the mouth and say, you can't have yours because we're gonna sell. So let's make sure that we want
Want to take one?
I'll just make a quick comment. Say we can always rescind that if it becomes an issue. We have potential to help us through some budgetary and finance issues. Something we can always rescind. I'll vote.
then what, second?
Second.
Any further comments or questions? Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Brandon, I wonder, are you able to provide, you said there's some commercial, industrial customers, residential that are still. Are you able to provide council with an overview snapshot of that after this meeting, just so we understand where those areas are, that there may be wells in place, and where areas could be impacted the most of this?
Definitely, the ones we know of.
Yeah.
And also on the, if anybody wants to see, you can go on Ohio Department of Natural Resources law, you can see every well drilled in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, I just know between Fifth Ward and Sixth Ward, it's Fifth Ward, city services, Newark Township with a well, Sixth Ward, the city services, so our areas get quite choppy.
I will say there are very few private wells for residential use in the city of Newark, but currently. There are several, industrial use,
Thank you.
but yes, I can.
Okay.
All right. Welcome.
Rochelle Bullen Smith, 237 Violet Court. And I was wondering whether, yes, hearings, very well. There's there is strange status that would be affected. Whether that's
Artesian spring. Yeah, we did not include Artesian Springs in this. This was a this was a well that was going vertical.
All right. See, Mr. Rose, did you have a comment? See no other comments or questions. All those in favor of passing this out of council, signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Then the vote will Pass with a vote of 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you for speeding that. So fun, Ted. Next, be ordinance 25-37, an ordinance. An ordinance authorizing and directing the North City Safety Director to certify the Lincoln County Auditor in the sum of $484,600 incurred by the York City Property Maintenance Department with respect to property maintenance violations to be placed as a lien upon certain parcels of real property situated in the city of Newark, Ohio. Almost $500,000, y'all been busy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, they're very busy. This is the annual lien document for unpaid property maintenance, fines and fees.
Got comments or questions?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Neely. Second by Line. Comments or questions from the audience? Seeing none. All those in favor of passing this on council, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That passes with a vote of 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, service committee is concluded. Will we solve council be itself? Oh, yes.
I knew you had
Good, Jeff, how you doing?
You ready to email?
No, I did not. I did not see it. Yeah, probably been there for a very long time. And if they're getting free water, why not?